She grew up in a small home where silence was rare, but music was. The house was often filled with worries, quiet arguments, and long evenings where everyone seemed tired. In one corner of the living room sat an old piano that had been passed down through the family. Some keys were chipped, others made dull sounds, but to her it felt alive. As a child, she would sit there after school, pressing keys slowly, trying to make sense of the sounds. No one taught her at first. She learned by listening, repeating, and feeling. Music became her safe place. When days felt heavy, she went to the piano. When she felt lonely, she played softly so no one would notice. Over time, her hands learned where to go without thinking. The piano understood her in ways people did not. While other children played outside, she stayed inside, practicing again and again, believing that one day this love for music would lead somewhere. As she grew older, life became harder. Money was always short. School demanded attention. People around her started asking serious questions about the future. Music, they said, was not a real plan. Playing the piano would not pay the bills. They meant well, but their words slowly planted doubt in her heart. She still played, but now it came with guilt. Every hour at the piano felt like time stolen from something more useful. She tried to balance everything. Early mornings were for work or school, late nights for practice. Her fingers were often sore, her eyes tired. Sometimes she fell asleep sitting at the piano bench. There were days when she wondered why she kept going. No one was watching. No one was waiting to discover her. It felt like she was playing only for herself, and even that started to feel small. Opportunities were rare. She applied for small programs, local events, and music groups whenever she heard about them. Most of the time, she never received a reply. When she did, it was often a polite rejection. They said she lacked formal training. They said there were others with stronger backgrounds. Each message felt like a quiet door closing. Still, she refused to stop completely. She told herself that every musician struggles. Every dream has delays. But deep down, fear was growing. What if this was not just a delay? What if this was the end of the road? The thought followed her everywhere. Even while playing, it sat beside her, heavy and uncomfortable. At home, the pressure increased. Bills stacked up. Responsibilities grew. The piano began to look less like a dream and more like a reminder of what was not working. Some evenings, she covered it with a cloth so she would not have to look at it. On those nights, the house felt even quieter. People around her started to suggest other paths. Stable jobs. Safe choices. They spoke with concern, not cruelty. They wanted her to be secure, not struggling. She listened and nodded, but inside she felt torn. Letting go of music felt like losing a part of herself. Yet holding on felt painful too. There were moments when she almost quit. One night, after another rejection, she sat alone in the dark. The piano keys reflected faint light from the street outside. She placed her hands on them but did not play. Instead, she cried quietly, afraid that years of effort had led to nothing. That night, she promised herself she would decide soon. She could not live forever between hope and disappointment. Days passed. She played less. Practice sessions became shorter. The music felt distant, as if it belonged to someone else. When she did play, her heart was not fully there. Doubt had drained the joy from it. She began to believe that maybe she was not as good as she thought. Maybe everyone else had been right. Yet, even in that low place, something refused to disappear. A small voice inside her kept whispering that music was still part of her, that it had shaped her, carried her, and given her strength when nothing else did. Ignoring it felt wrong, but listening to it felt risky. One afternoon, she sat at the piano again, not to practice, but to remember. She played an old piece she had loved as a child. The sound was imperfect, but it was honest. As the notes filled the room, memories came back. Late nights, quiet dreams, the feeling of being understood. For a moment, the weight lifted. That moment did not solve her problems, but it reminded her of something important. She had not chosen music for success or praise. She chose it because it spoke for her when words failed. Realizing this made the struggle feel different. Still hard, but not empty. Even so, reality waited. She knew she could not keep going without some kind of answer. The choice stood in front of her like a narrow road splitting in two directions. One side was safe and predictable. The other was uncertain and exhausting. She stood still, unsure which way to go. By the end of that week, she was tired in a way sleep could not fix. She looked at the piano one last time and told herself that if nothing changed soon, she would walk away. It felt like saying goodbye before anything had truly ended. She did not know it yet, but life was quietly preparing a moment that would test everything she believed. At that point, she and everyone around her were ready to give up. No applause, no spotlight, just a woman standing at the edge of her dream, unsure if it was worth one more step. After the quiet moment at the piano, life did not suddenly become easier. The next few days moved slowly, almost painfully. She went through her routine without much feeling, waking up early, doing what needed to be done, and returning home tired. The thought of giving up followed her everywhere. It was there when she walked down the street, when she ate alone, and when she lay awake at night staring at the ceiling. She told herself she would take a break from music, just for a while. Not quitting completely, but stepping back enough to breathe. Still, her hands kept moving as if they remembered the piano even when her mind tried to forget. She tapped rhythms on tables and hummed melodies without realizing it. Music had become part of her body, and letting it go felt unnatural. One afternoon, while scrolling through her phone without interest, she noticed a small announcement shared by a local community group. They were organizing a modest event where people from different backgrounds could perform. Nothing grand. No promises of fame or money, just a chance to share something meaningful. First, she ignored it. She had seen many similar posts before, and they usually led nowhere. But that evening, the idea returned. It stayed with her while she cooked, while she cleaned, while she tried to distract herself with other thoughts. The event was not far away. The requirements were simple. Anyone could apply. Something about that simplicity made her uneasy. It also made her curious. She read the announcement again. The deadline was close. If she wanted to apply, she had to decide quickly. Her heart beat faster as she imagined it. Sitting at another piano, playing in front of people, letting herself hope again. The fear came immediately after. What if it ended like everything else? What if this was just another reminder that she was not enough? She closed her phone and placed it on the table. For a long time, she sat in silence. This was not just about one event. It felt like a final question being asked of her. Was she willing to try one more time, knowing it might hurt? Or was she ready to walk away and never look back? That night, she opened the piano cover again. Dust rose softly into the air. She wiped the keys with her sleeve and sat down. She did not play right away. Instead, she rested her hands on the keys, feeling their familiar shape. Her heart felt heavy, but there was also a quiet sense of honesty in that moment. She knew she could not keep avoiding the choice. She began to play slowly, not practicing for perfection, but for truth. Each note carried years of effort and doubt. She listened closely, adjusting her touch, letting the music breathe. It had been a long time since she played like this, without pressure or expectation. When she stopped, her eyes were wet, but her chest felt lighter. By the next morning, she had made a decision. With shaking hands, she filled out the simple form for the event. She did not write anything impressive. She did not exaggerate her experience. She just told the truth, that she loved the piano and wanted to share something from the heart. When she pressed submit, she felt both relief and fear. Days passed without a response. Each notification made her heart jump, only to sink again. She told herself not to expect anything. Still, she checked her phone more often than usual. During this waiting time, she practiced quietly at night. Not because she was sure she would be chosen, but because playing helped calm her thoughts. When the message finally came, she read it twice to be sure. She had been accepted. There were no special compliments, no promises, just a short note confirming her spot and the date. She sat down, holding her phone, unsure how to feel. Happiness came first, followed quickly by fear. This was real now. As the day approached, doubt returned stronger than before. She questioned her choice. What if she embarrassed herself? What if the audience did not care? What if her performance was forgettable? These thoughts followed her into practice sessions, making her hands tense and her mistakes louder. She reminded herself why she agreed to this. Not to impress, not to prove anything, just to be honest through music. Slowly, she focused less on being perfect and more on being present. She chose a piece that meant something to her, one that reflected struggle, patience, and quiet strength. At home, reactions were mixed. Some people were supportive, telling her it was good to try. Others warned her not to get her hopes up. She listened without arguing. This time, she kept her expectations low. She told herself that even if this led nowhere, at least she would know she tried. The night before the event, sleep did not come easily. She replayed the performance in her mind again and again. Her heart raced with imagined mistakes. At some point, she sat up and whispered to herself that whatever happened, she would face it. Giving up without trying one last time would hurt more. Morning arrived quietly. She prepared herself slowly, choosing simple clothes, nothing that would draw attention. As she stepped outside, the air felt different, heavy but full of possibility. She did not know what waited for her, but she knew this moment mattered. As she walked toward the place where the event would be held, she felt the weight of every year she had spent doubting herself. This was not just a performance. It was a test of whether she could stand by her passion even when the world had given her every reason to stop. Whatever happened next would change something inside her forever. The place where the event was held was smaller than she imagined. From the outside, it looked ordinary, almost forgettable. Inside, the air carried a mix of quiet chatter and nervous energy. Chairs were arranged in simple rows, and a modest stage stood at the front. A piano waited there under soft lights, its surface slightly worn, like it had its own history. She arrived early, hoping it would calm her nerves. Instead, it gave her more time to think. She sat near the back, watching others arrive. Some performers looked confident, laughing with friends. Others sat alone, staring at the floor, clearly nervous. Seeing them made her feel less alone. Everyone here was carrying something unseen. When the event began, the host spoke briefly, welcoming everyone and explaining that this gathering was about sharing, not judging. The words helped a little, but her heart still beat fast. One by one, performers went up. There were singers, spoken word artists, and musicians with guitars. Some performances were strong, others unsure, but each received polite applause. As she listened, her emotions moved in waves. Sometimes she felt inspired. Other times, fear crept back in. She wondered if she belonged here at all. The piano on stage felt far away, like a place she was not meant to reach. Her turn approached faster than expected. When her name was called, it felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. For a moment, she did not move. Then she stood up, legs slightly weak, and walked forward. Each step felt heavy, but there was no turning back now. The room grew quieter as she reached the stage. She nodded politely and sat at the piano. Up close, she noticed small details. A loose bench, faint scratches on the keys, the smell of old wood. These little things grounded her, reminding her that this was real. She placed her hands on the keys and paused. The silence stretched. She could feel eyes on her, waiting. Her mind filled with doubts, but she pushed them aside. She closed her eyes for a brief second and took a slow breath. The first note came out softer than she planned, but it was steady. Then another followed. Slowly, the music began to form. With each note, her hands remembered what to do. The tension in her shoulders eased. She was no longer thinking about the audience or the room. She was listening. As the melody continued, something changed inside her. The fear that had followed her for weeks began to fade. In its place came focus and honesty. She played not to impress, but to express. Every sound carried pieces of her journey. The long nights, the doubt, the quiet hope. In the audience, small changes began to happen. People leaned forward. Conversations stopped. Phones were lowered. The room seemed to breathe with the music. She did not notice these things at first. She was fully inside the moment. The piano responded to her touch, even with its imperfections. A few notes sounded rough, but she did not stop. She let them be part of the story. This was not about flawlessness. It was about truth. As she reached the middle of the piece, emotion rose unexpectedly. Her hands trembled for a brief moment. She thought of all the times she almost quit. All the voices telling her to choose something safer. The memory made her heart ache, but it also gave her strength. She pressed forward, letting the music carry that feeling. The melody grew stronger, then softer again. Felt like a conversation, like a confession made without words. She felt tears forming, but she kept playing. This was her moment, fragile and powerful at the same time. Somewhere in the room, someone quietly wiped their eyes. Another person sat completely still, afraid to move. The performance had created a shared silence, the kind that feels full instead of empty. As she approached the final section, her breathing slowed. The notes became gentler, more open. She let the last chord linger, allowing it to fade naturally. When her hands lifted from the keys, the sound disappeared, leaving the room still. For a brief second, no one moved. The silence was deep, almost sacred. She sat there, unsure what came next, her heart pounding in her chest. Then applause began. At first, it was hesitant, like people were waking up. Then it grew louder, stronger. She looked up, surprised. Faces in the audience showed something she had not expected. Not just approval, but emotion, connection. She stood slowly and gave a small bow, feeling overwhelmed. The applause continued longer than she imagined it would. As she walked off the stage, her legs felt unsteady, but her chest felt light. She returned to her seat, barely aware of the performances that followed. Her mind replayed the music, the feeling of letting go. For the first time in a long while, she felt proud. Not because others clapped, but because she stayed true to herself. When the event ended, a few people approached her. They did not speak loudly or dramatically. They simply said the music moved them, that it meant something. Each word felt like a small gift. As she stepped outside into the night air, the world felt quieter, clearer. Nothing about her life had changed yet. There were no promises waiting, but something inside her had shifted. She had faced her fear and played anyway. She walked home slowly, replaying the sound of the piano in her mind. She did not know what this moment would lead to, but she knew it mattered. Standing on that stage, she had proven something to herself. She was not done. Not yet. The days after the performance did not explode with sudden miracles. There were no dramatic phone calls the next morning, no instant offers waiting at the door. Instead, life returned to its familiar rhythm. She woke up, followed her routine, and went on with her responsibilities. From the outside, nothing looked different. But inside her, something had clearly shifted. She kept replaying the moment she finished playing. The silence, the applause, the faces in the room. It stayed with her not as excitement, but as calm reassurance. For the first time in a long while, she did not feel embarrassed about believing in herself. Even if nothing came from it, that performance mattered. A few days later, she received a short message from the event organizers, thanking her for participating. It was polite and simple, the kind of message she had received many times before. She read it, smiled softly, and put her phone away. She did not expect more. Then, slowly, unexpected things began to happen. Someone from the audience shared a short video of her performance online. It was not perfect quality, and the sound was slightly uneven, but the emotion was clear. Friends of friends began commenting. Strangers shared kind words. She noticed it quietly without making much of it. At first, she felt uncomfortable with the attention. She was not used to being seen. She worried that people would lose interest as quickly as they found her. Still, the messages kept coming. Some people said the music reminded them of difficult moments in their own lives. Others thanked her for playing with honesty. Each message felt personal and sincere. One evening, while checking her phone, she saw an email that made her pause. It was from someone involved in local music events, asking if she would be interested in performing again at a small gathering. Nothing big, just another chance to play. Her hands shook as she read it. This time, fear came with excitement. She did not respond right away. She sat quietly, letting the feeling settle. Part of her worried that saying yes would bring pressure again. Another part knew that this was the very thing she had once wished for. After a long moment, she replied honestly, saying she would like to try. As new opportunities appeared, she noticed a change in how people around her treated her. Conversations felt different. There was more curiosity, less doubt. Some who once encouraged her to quit now listened more carefully. They asked questions instead of giving advice. The shift was subtle but meaningful. She returned to the piano with renewed purpose. Practice no longer felt like punishment or escape. It felt like preparation. She played more openly, allowing mistakes without harsh judgment. Music slowly became a source of strength again, not something she had to defend. Still, there were moments of doubt. Late at night, she wondered if this attention would fade. She worried about disappointing others. But she reminded herself that she was no longer playing to chase approval. She was playing because it was honest. At the next small performance, she felt nervous again, but not paralyzed. When she sat at the piano, the fear did not control her. She played with the same intention as before. The response was warm and genuine. Afterward, a few people approached her, encouraging her to keep going. Word spread slowly, not in a loud or dramatic way, but through quiet conversations and shared moments. She was invited to play at community spaces, small halls, and private gatherings. Each experience helped her grow, not just as a musician, but as a person. She began to understand that success did not always arrive as a single life-changing moment. Sometimes it came as a series of small doors opening one after another. Each one required courage to step through. At home, the piano no longer felt like a reminder of failure. It became a symbol of resilience. She kept it uncovered now, allowing it to sit proudly in the room. When she played, the house felt warmer, less heavy. People who heard her story were surprised by how close she had been to quitting. Some told her they were glad she did not give up. Hearing this made her realize how easily the world could have missed her music if she had walked away. She also noticed changes within herself. She spoke with more confidence. She trusted her instincts more. The fear of being judged did not disappear, but it no longer controlled her choices. One quiet afternoon, she sat alone at the piano, not preparing for any event, just playing freely. The sound filled the room, gentle and steady. She smiled, realizing how far she had come from the night she almost quit. She did not know exactly where this path would lead. There were still uncertainties ahead. But she finally understood something important. Giving up would have been easier, but it would have cost her moments like these. The performance that almost never happened had changed the way she saw herself. It showed her that her voice mattered, even if the world did not always listen right away. And that realization was more powerful than applause. As she closed the piano lid and stood up, she felt ready for whatever came next. Not because she was fearless, but because she had learned how to keep going despite the fear. As time passed, opportunities continued to appear, each one small but meaningful. She played at local events, gatherings, and even private spaces where her music was welcomed with warmth. Every performance helped her grow in confidence, reminding her that the choice to continue had been worth it. She no longer worried about being perfect. She focused on sharing her story through sound. With each performance, more people took notice. Some were familiar with her journey from the earlier event, and others discovered her music for the first time. Her audience grew slowly, not in numbers at first, but in genuine connection. People came not for showmanship, but because her music touched something inside them. They felt the honesty, the struggle, and the resilience in every note. One day, she received an invitation to perform at a slightly larger community concert. The thought made her nervous, but she welcomed the chance. This event was different from the others. More people would watch. More eyes, more attention, more expectation. Yet, instead of fear overwhelming her, she felt readiness. She had learned how to carry her doubts without letting them define her. She practiced diligently but not obsessively. Each note was shaped by experience, by understanding what it meant to play from the heart. She remembered the nights she almost quit and the empty silence of those days. Now, every key she pressed felt like a statement. She had chosen to persist. The day of the concert arrived, and the venue was small but filled with anticipation. The audience seemed curious, quiet, waiting to see what she would bring. When she walked on stage, her steps were steady. She approached the piano and took her seat, breathing in the soft, expectant energy around her. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, as they often were. But gradually the music gained strength. It carried emotion, a mixture of past fears and newfound courage. She felt every chord in her body, every rhythm like a heartbeat, and the room seemed to respond. Listeners leaned forward, their attention fully captured by the sound. Throughout the performance, she poured herself into the music. She remembered each moment she had struggled, each night she had practiced alone, each rejection that had tested her resolve. Those memories gave her strength rather than fear. Every note she played told a story without words, a story that belonged to her and to anyone who listened closely. By the final section, the room was completely silent except for the piano. Every sound resonated. Every pause felt significant. She held the last chord, letting it linger, and then gently released it. For a brief moment, nothing moved. Then, applause broke out, warm and sincere. It was longer than any she had received before, and this time it felt earned. As she stood to acknowledge the audience, she noticed faces filled with emotion. Some were smiling broadly, others had tears in their eyes. She realized that this was not just about her success, but about the connection she had created. Her music had spoken to something deep inside people, something universal. After the concert, several people approached her not just to compliment, but to share how the music had affected them. One person spoke about a personal struggle and how her music reminded them to keep going. Another mentioned how it helped them feel calm after a stressful day. She listened quietly, touched by the authenticity of their words. Back at home, she reflected on how far she had come. The piano no longer represented struggle alone. It symbolized resilience, courage, and the quiet victories that are often unseen. She played softly that night, not for anyone but herself, feeling a sense of peace she had never known before. She realized that giving up had never truly been an option. The decision to continue, even when the outcome was uncertain, had changed everything. It taught her that persistence matters more than immediate recognition, that even small moments of courage can ripple outward, affecting not only her life but the lives of others. Over the following months, invitations and opportunities continued to appear. Some were small, community-based performances, while others were slightly larger events. Each one was an affirmation that her choice to persist had opened doors she could not have imagined. She did not seek fame and she did not need it. She sought expression, connection, and the chance to continue doing what she loved. Her story became one she shared quietly with others, not for attention, but to inspire. She spoke to friends, neighbors, and anyone who would listen about the importance of perseverance and the value of following one's passion. She emphasized that struggles are not failures if they lead to growth, and that sometimes the greatest triumph comes simply from refusing to give up. The woman who once doubted herself now stood as a quiet example of resilience. She continued to face challenges, of course. Life did not become perfect and obstacles still appeared, but she now met them with a different perspective. Fear was still present, but it no longer dictated her choices. She had learned to move forward, even when the future was uncertain. She also learned to appreciate the journey itself. The long nights of practice, the moments of doubt, the almost giving up experiences, they were all part of her story. They shaped her music, her character, and her understanding of what it meant to persist. In the end, the performance that had astonished everyone was more than a single moment of brilliance. It was the culmination of years of quiet effort, patience, and determination. It showed her and those who witnessed it that even when hope seems lost, it is possible to rise again. That one final step, taken with courage, can lead to a new beginning. She looked at the piano in the quiet of her home, the instrument that had carried her through doubt and struggle. She smiled softly, understanding that this was not just the end of one chapter, but the start of many more. She would continue to play, to share, and to inspire, not because it was easy, but because it was real. And in that reality, she had found her strength, her voice, and her path forward.